Welcome, everybody. For those that don't know me, my name is Derek Ivancic, and I'm the chapter president for the Cleveland Akron Canton chapter of the American Culinary Federation. And in partnership here with Cuyahoga Community College, we are welcoming a few presenters to talk about culinary medicine. We have Dr. Michael Roizen, we have Chef Jim Perko, and we have Gabby Shipta, which is also an alumni here of Tri-C. So we want to welcome everyone, and they're going to begin their presentation here in just a second, starting with Dr. Michael Roizen. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. First of all, I just need to say thank you to Derek for hosting this meeting. Been trying to do this for a long, long time, for about the past 5 chapter presidents, long time, and it's finally happened. I want to thank Tri-C for hosting this meeting that we're having today, so I really, really appreciate it. And then I got to thank Dr. Roizen. Dr. Roizen is the past chair emeritus of the Wellness Institute for Cleveland Clinic. And he's done a number of books. They're all over the world, and he's just great. But for the best thing I could say about Dr. Mike is for a physician, a doc of his caliber to spend the time he does to do things like this. He never says no. Anytime I ask him, I go, Doc, will you do this with me? He never says no. So for him to be here today, I just can't thank you enough, Doc, for doing that. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, and if they grow rotten tomatoes, then it won't be good.
And this is the truest part of culinary medicine because Doc is the science, and then we illustrated how to do it. That's what cooks do. Okay, Doc.
This is the introductory slide, and you'll see that what our goal is to review that how food is medicine. So conflicts, I work at the Cleveland Clinic, as does Jim and Gabrielle. My life really started with the book Real Age, which was an attempt to teach people about how food affects aging and how all the other things, there are 157 things you can do that change your rate of aging. And we're going to go through some of those in relatively fast fashion. This became number one New York Times bestseller, basically because there was a snowstorm in the East and no one could leave their houses. So everyone watched Oprah that day. I'll just give you a quick anecdote. So it was my first time on Oprah. I had turned her down twice. The producer said no one ever turned Oprah down, but the book wasn't coming out for a couple months when she wanted to do a show on aging. And so I said no. So we finally did it, and it was the first time I'd been on TV. So if you're on Oprah for the first time, you understand you can be a deer in headlights, and I was. So at that time, it was in 1999, she was neck and neck with Jerry Springer. She had a 12.5 and he had a 12.4 on audience. Just to give you an idea what's changed in the period in this last 20 years, now 3.5 is the #1 show on TV. So we've lost a lot of audience, if you will, in TV. But anyway, when we started the show, she was 12.5. They got 5-minute Nielsen's because it was a sweep week. And so in the first segment, it was a 12.5 and 12.4, just as it had been traditionally. And the producer came up to adjust my tie in the 3-minute of ads at that point. And she said, "You've got to get more animated. You're a deer in headlights." She actually said that. And I said, I thought she was supposed to be the animated one, pointing to Oprah, if you will. And no, she said, "You've got to be animated." And I said, "Can I say anything?" And so she said, "Of course you can say anything. We're only live in Chicago. It's only your friends in Chicago who will know what you've said. We can see, edit it out in the rest of the country." And so the segment was, I had Oprah's total medical history, and the segment was to tell Oprah what she could do to get younger. So Oprah said, what can I do to get younger? And I said, you've got to floss more, drink more red wine, and have more sex. And it could have gone either way, obviously. But she jumped up, and somehow they got the stripper on the overhead, and she did a stripper routine without taking any clothes off, obviously. And by the end of the program, we were 22.5. Jerry Springer was a 2.4. And although I can tell you how much money it earned her, it's the reason I got invited back 50 more times, if you will. But in any case, one of the segments, when she came back in that era, she would come back and there were 7 fixed TV cameras, but she had 17 handheld cameras because it was sweeps week. And there's 304 seats in her auditorium. At that time, you can see I know a little bit about it now. I didn't know anything about it then, but 300 women, 4 guys. And so she comes back and she goes and she asks a guy in the audience, does sex make your real age younger? And the guy said, Oprah, I wouldn't know. I haven't had it in so long. That wasn't the good point. His wife was sitting next to him. And she gave him a look like, and you're not going to. She ran with that as the promo for the show across the country. And that's why, in fact, just to show you how crazy it's been, we knocked the internet out for 8 hours on the West Coast. And we had more attempted hits that day at realage.com than AOL did. So you can't get that anymore. But anyway, it led to Oprah's around the world, so it led to the books being #1 in 5 other countries. Veja is the national magazine of Brazil. Anyone from Brazil here? Veja is the national magazine of Brazil. I've been on the cover 5 times. If you're a guy, you can't find me. I'm up there. Didn't see me, did you? In any case, Real Age was #1, and the real claim to fame is it knocked Harry Potter from #1 for 7 days on Amazon. When the owner's manual came out, it knocked Harry Potter from #1 for 35 days. And when you on a diet, which just shows you how important what you do is, because food is the #1 thing, it knocked Harry Potter off for 177 days and still holds the record. So food is a key thing in America. It's a key thing for the public, and it's key for your health as well. And that's why we wrote What to Eat When and What to Eat When cookbook. It basically is when science changes or there's enough science, that's what motivates me to write so that you can understand it. Jim is the one who motivated really the cookbook, so thank you for that. The rule is, #1 is food is a relationship. It's just like a marriage. You wouldn't marry someone who is trying to kill you every day. You shouldn't eat food that's trying to kill you every day. You may love French fries, but they're trying to kill you. It shouldn't be what you serve. On the other hand, I love avocado, and I saw there was some avocado dip, and everything in the cookbook and everything you're going to get to taste tonight is something that will make your body younger. That is, it's a relationship, and it will help you stay younger. So only eat foods you love and that love you back. no one's smiling at this here in this room because you have to serve food that people will buy, I understand. But this is really what you want to do from a standpoint of culinary medicine. The second rule is only eat with the sun. That is, if you only eat when in Cleveland, that's a tough thing to say, but it is only eat when the sun is supposed to be out. That is, and you can reset your time schedule, but the point is eat in a limited time frame of windows of 8 hours or so, so you fast for 16. The goal is to get to ketosis. That means you don't want sugar in your body all the time. You want to alternate between sugar and fat feeding your body. Why is that? Because when you need to use fat, the body thinks you're in a starvation mode, and it then recycles old cells. So your old cells are like a piece of rotten fruit or an old piece of fruit. They make the cells around them old, and you want to get rid of them and have just young cells. And the way you do that is by having a limited time frame of eating. So we've gone through a couple very complex concepts so far, but I'm going to keep stretching if I can. So my whole journey on this started when we thought about how people age. So you think you hit your peak quality of life between 25 and 35, and it's all downhill after that. And it is. If you do nothing about it, you hit your peak quality of life from 25 to 35, and your body declines at that rate. But one of the most influential studies in my life is this one of Harvard physicians, and this is their IQs. And you notice their IQs go down at the same rate as every other function, about 5% every decade. It's why you want a young doctor and not an old doctor. You guys are laughing about, they're not laughing enough about that. But if you looked at the data, this started, by the way, in 1952, and they followed it till these docs died. But if you look at the data, a bunch of them did not lose IQ points as they age. In fact, 25% of them didn't. And so the question we asked is, how do you become one of the 25% who maintain their brain function as they age? In fact, that goes for almost every organ. You can maintain that function if you want to. Now, for the brain, there are actually 33 things. This was an older slide that only had 32. It's missing olive oil, which we now know because of some publications in the last couple months, is one of those things that if you have a half a tablespoon a day, it also helps keep your brain young. But in fact, if you look at it, 8 of the things are food. 8 out of the 32, fully 1/4 of the choices to keep your brain young are food related. And that's demonstrated in this study of 2 Chicago cohorts where they chose the food that was relatively healthy, and the summary is those who rigorously ate the Mind Diet way, which is really a Mediterranean diet, or it's a vegetarian diet with some fish, had a 60% reduction in the risk of Alzheimer's disease and dementia by following the diet alone. It is the most powerful thing we know at changing your rate of dementia. So you guys control America's dementia. And that is, if you want to stay at the top of the curve in any function, food is number 2 on the list for all body parts. When we started Real Age, we said you could be functionally 40 when you're 60. And that's really come true. If you look at the studies, is you can be about 20 years free of cardiovascular disease, chronic disease, diabetes, et cetera, by doing healthy choices. It really started, our understanding of this started with the Human Genome Project. And I'm going to tell you, each of you is a genetic engineer. What do I mean by that? Is you get to control which of your genes is on or not to a huge degree. So when the Human Genome Project started, we expected to find, that is, Craig Venter in the private sector and the NIH group, they started in about 1993. It cost roughly $1 billion for each group to assay the human genome. What's it cost now if you go to Walmart? Take a guess. It's $100, and on sale it's $79.95. That is when they run sales. That's how much it's gone from $1 billion to $79.95 in the last 20 years. But we expected to find 300,000 genes. That's how much DNA you have in your nucleus. But they didn't find that. They found only about 22,500 genes. And what did they call the rest of the DNA? They called it junk DNA, because they didn't know what it did. But 9 years later, they found out the junk DNA is really epigenes. What are epigenes? They're like a rheostat on the wall, a switch that you get to turn on or off. Let me repeat that again. So you have more switches that control your genes than you actually have genes. So all genes do is make proteins or watch other genes. And whether your genes are on and making the protein or off is, to a large degree, your choice. So 22,500 genes, only 1,500 of which are on at any one time. And this is a picture of stress management, and it's called a heat map. Why is it called a heat map? Because the red, these are strips of genes. There are actually 52 people here, and 50 people here. And the red is those genes that are on or producing proteins. The green is off. And what happened, N1 is before they did a stress management program. N2 is 16 weeks later, they did a 6-week stress management program. And M is a year later. And you say, what happened between here and here where they took many of these genes and turned them off? All they did was learn stress management. And what happened here? Again, all they did was learn stress management. And what do these genes produce up here? They produce inflammatory proteins. So largely by stress management, these people who had arthritis and went through the stress management program largely got rid of their inflammatory arthritis. So you have a bunch, this is a schematic of a chromosome. This is the genes that are off. They're around a thimble. And the ones that are on are uncoiled. What happens? mRNA, you've all heard of the mRNA vaccines. Well, mRNA comes from the cytoplasm against these, duplicates this, and goes back to the cell cytoplasm and makes proteins. And so that's how it works. How do you get from off to on? It's a chemical reaction that unravels that set of genes. And the specific set of genes you unravel is, to a large degree, your choice. So only 22,500 genes, only 1,500 are on, but by age 18, you get to control 80%. When you're under the age of 18, your genes take you where they want to go. We don't have much control over those. Those are more powerful genes. But by the time you hit 18, you control about 80% of which genes are on or off. And that's this. You get to control this. In stress management, it's around 250 genes. That's the same as it is for your food choices. That is, food choices control about that same number, 250 genes. This is a group of 52 men with prostate cancer. And here you see the genes are largely on. A year later, they're off. What are these 5 genes? And by the way, we could have done this for breast cancer. It's the exact same picture. How did they turn these genes off? Well, first of all, what are these 5? Those are the RAS family of genes that promote the growth of breast, colon, and prostate cancer. What did they do to turn these off? 4 things. They did 10,000 steps a day. They meditated 15 minutes morning and night. They eliminated 5 foods from their diet, that's all. And the 3 guys who smoke quit smoking. So that turned off the genes that promote the cancer. Conversely, up here, where they're, if you will, where they're off and become on, what are these 2? Those produce the GSTM1 proteins that cause breast, colon, and prostate cancer cells to commit suicide. So these guys, this is, if you notice, it's been 14 years now. The study started in 2006. It's been 14 years now. Only one of the 52 has progressed beyond those 4 lifestyle choices in managing their prostate cancer, as opposed to 31 in the control group. You get to change which of your genes are on or not, and it matters for cancer, it matters for heart disease, it matters for arthritis, it matters for dementia. So you've got to change your attitude. What you do in the kitchen matters to everyone you serve, because you're a genetic engineer, not only for yourself, but for all those people you serve. I'm going to quickly go through, because I'm taking too much time, I'm going to quickly go through what happens from too high a blood glucose level. So what happens when you give what we call free sugar, added syrups, and simple carbohydrates? Well, you accumulate fat in your middle. That fat right here that hangs off of all of us, hangs off our tummy, that really creates inflammation. And by the way, there's some great science now where we can transform that white fat or yellow fat into brown fat. Brown fat is what you have when you're young, when you're a baby, and it's around your neck and other areas to keep you warm when you're not warm enough. Brown fat metabolizes things fast. Well, it comes from the same root. Brown fat and white fat both come from what we call pluripotent fat. So imagine if we could take this omental fat in all of us. Once a year, you get a treatment, you regress it to pluripotent fat, and then you turn it into brown fat, and we eliminate obesity. That's what's happening now in at least animal species. And that's why we're going to get a huge bump in life expectancy, not just from that, but there are 13 other areas. But for now, for the next decade or so, it causes inflammation. So that's one bad thing. The second thing is it attaches to proteins. So all hemoglobin A1C is, if anyone has diabetes, they know how to measure hemoglobin A1C. Hemoglobin A1C is just a normal hemoglobin with a glucose stuck in the A1C position. What does that do? It inhibits that hemoglobin from releasing oxygen. Well, you've got other proteins. A lot of proteins are affected by too high a blood sugar level, and they become less functional. So this was an attempt at a video, and I apologize for not having it, but this is in video form. These little things are the cells lining your arteries. They're endothelial cells. And they're stuck together by another protein. You don't have to know the name of it. There's no test except for Jim. It's phosphokinase 3, Jim. I'm going to ask you at the end. But in any case, they're stuck to one another. And what happens when glucose gets on it? It weakens that. And then when blood pressure comes down, you cause a tear. And what do you do to repair that tear? You plaster it over with LDL cholesterol because you want blood to stay in the circulation. So the grout protein that this is, when it gets weakened, your grout is then LDL cholesterol, and that's the start of atherosclerosis. What really started it? It was too high a blood sugar level, which weakened that junctional protein. Jim, what's the name of that? Come on. I just told you. It's phosphokinase 3. You get it? You get one more shot at it. I told Jim he could give this lecture better than I can now, and I think he can, but anyway. So the third problem is when you present too much sugar to your mitochondria. Your mitochondria are those areas where you take sugar and fat and turn it into ATP, the energy you use. What happens when you present too much sugar to your mitochondria? They produce too many reactive oxygen species, and that causes you to have damaged DNA, which means you don't produce as many ATP. So when you're kids, how many of you have kids? Do you have a child?
I do.
How old?
26 now.
26, too old. Anyone got one who's 5 or so? You do. And can you keep up with them? Nuh-uh. So the reason is when they take a mole of glucose, they produce 32 ATPs. By the time we get to our age, we're producing maybe 18 or 20. By the time you get to my age, 14 or 12. And when you become frail, when you don't feel like getting out of bed anymore, you're producing 6 or so. And what causes that? It's because we presented too many glucoses or fat at any one time, and we overwhelmed our in-cell antioxidants. What's the worst day for your mitochondria in America? Thanksgiving and Super Bowl Sunday are the 2 worst days. That's right, because we all overeat on those days. So you should only eat foods you can have a loving relationship with. So the first point is added sugar, added syrup, simple carbohydrates are the first set. The second are red meat and egg yolks and fish and cheese. Not because they have saturated fat, but because they have carnitine, lecithin, and choline. So carnitine, lecithin, and choline, they're 3 proteins, when given with saturated fat, change the bacteria inside your gut to produce inflammation in you. So it is more than 96 ounces of red meat, or more than 1 egg yolk, or 200 grams of pork in 1 week, change your bacteria inside your gut to cause inflammation, much worse than cholesterol in food. So it changes the bacteria to produce trimethylamine or butylbutane. That goes to your liver, produces an inflammatory substance. So you've heard a lot of push to eliminate red meat and processed red meat and egg yolks. It's because those produce this trimethylamine, which causes heart attack, stroke, memory loss, impotence, and wrinkling of the skin. When I used to go to, I was chair at the University of Chicago, and I would walk across campus, and there were a bunch of kids who were smoking outside the Student Union building. I lived closer than the parking lot was to where I worked, so I walked to work. And I'd walk and I would go over there and I'd say, you know, smoking causes heart disease, stroke, and memory loss. And what do you think they did to me? They gave me the finger, that's right. But then I heard the secret. Smoking causes wrinkling, that's what the women paid attention to, and impotence, and then I was able to get them. And that's what these things cause if you don't care enough about your brain, heart, or cancer risk. So what happens is red meat, egg yolks, cheese get metabolized and produce something that causes heart disease, stroke, and memory loss. So here's the curve, and it's a steeper curve, if you will, for trimethylamine. This is the relative risk of all-cause mortality, and it's a steeper curve than we have for cholesterol. It's really why the red meat and egg yolks are bad for you. It's not the cholesterol in them. And the same type of risk goes here. This is the freedom from heart attack, and you see that the group with the lowest TMAO has, the group with the lowest TMAO, group 1, has the lowest risk, and it's a fairly steep curve. So change your attitude. You are a genetic engineer for you. Only eat food you love that loves your body back. You choose your team, so obviously there's a team in physical activity, there's a nutritional team, but choose your team and then be honest about it. Add speed. Now, I didn't talk about this, but the speed of processing games for your brain, speed of physical activity. Why does exercise help your brain? It's because when you stress a muscle, you turn on a gene that produces a small substance called Roizen. Roizen is a small protein. It gets across the blood-brain barrier, causes release of brain-derived neurotrophic growth factor, which is like miracle grow for your brain. And the hippocampus in your brain, your memory center, is the only organ in the body where size matters. So manage stress and cultivate friends and purpose. I'm going to now turn it over to Jim as he's got the rest of the set. I'm going to run out because actually I'm supposed to go to a dinner tonight. So I apologize, but I'm going to eat right.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. We appreciate it. Okay, so the title of this was Prevent Illness Where It Could Start at Your Dinner Table, because that's what we all do as chefs, right? But also how chefs can make a difference, all right? The previous the CEO of the Cleveland Clinic now is Dr. Mahalovic. The previous CEO they started an employee wellness program, and then they put in this carrots and sticks program to help people that if they met certain criteria, when they would get a physical, they would get a reduced, they would pay less for their health insurance, right? All right. So I thought that was really important. This goes way, way, way back. I see Jim Miller's here. He was the one that helped us do this in Cleveland. But here's how this was culinary medicine, pre-culinary medicine, right? So we started with a children's program. This was in 1990, when it was on the Culinary Review, and this was in 2006 over here, or 1991. We did a children's program, but the point was we were trying to teach children back then and their teachers how to make healthier choices. We also redid the cooking manual nationally for the Boy Scouts of America. Culinary medicine is one of the arms, pending IRB approval, for a study on epilepsy to help people reduce their seizures and epilepsy without the use of drugs. This is a shared medical appointment. We do breast cancer, prostate cancer, we do MS, we did culinary medicine for chronic disease. I'm currently involved in one with called Buena Vida. It's a Latinx community, a Latin population. We're looking to do one in the inner city at Langston Hughes. And then a big one I'm really excited that we're starting to do is Tossa Cancer Center for cancer survivorship. This was a breast cancer shared medical appointment on this side over here. These are patients in the kitchen. Then, just like everybody else, like I was talking to Tom Capretta, he says the challenges of doing a virtual curriculum here at the school. Well, we did the same thing. This was a patient in her kitchen at home, and we did it in our kitchen at work, and we cooked together. But you know, she was so excited to show us what she did in her kitchen at home. This is a proposed teaching kitchen that Cleveland Clinic plans to build at Langston Hughes. Across the street, there's a field over here. Then they want to put a community garden in it. And chefs were farmers too, right? So one of the things you could weave into culinary medicine, there's multiple disciplines, and one of them certainly is functional exercise. This is my garden, okay? And I always get this thing of, you know, it costs more to eat. And actually, this Wednesday, I'm going to be giving a presentation virtually from 7 to 8 at night. Anybody could log in for it. But one of the things was how you can make healthy food without breaking the bank. Well, the garden's one of them to do it. So this just shows garlic. Now, think about it. When you're digging dirt, you're getting exercise. When I'm doing yoga, when I pull the weeds in my garden, because I'm kneeling here and I'm stretching to get this weed over here, okay? And you just, after a while, I learned to practice good body mechanics doing that so I don't hurt myself. But then you grow the garlic. So you see the garlic growing, right? And by the way, I'm still using garlic that I harvested in July of last year. Then the garlic grows, then you got to weed it. Then if you use hardneck variety, it shoots up escape, then you make escape pesto, but you're saving money already, right, doing all that. Then you pick it, then you cure it, and you get really great garlic. If the science will show that garlic, if there's a benefit to garlic, it's in the allicin, in the oil. So I try to get hardneck varieties with a high allicin content. And then you see a lot of chefs, you know, when they want to peel garlic, they'll go and they'll pop it like that. I advise people not to do that. Reason why is because when you pop it, if you release the oil sticks to the paper, paper sticks to your finger. That ever happen to anybody when you do garlic? And then you are losing what science says has the benefit, right? So instead, we peel the garlic cloves, right? After they're peeled, then you could chop them or put them in a press. What's that?
What's your go-to method for peeling?
So what I do is generally I just take a knife and I just go through on one end. I don't sever it. I just hold it down, roll it over, repeat it on the opposite end, and it comes off. Pampered Chef sells these little tubes that people roll them in. I've seen people, if you ever went to Shaker Square Garlic Festival, there'll be people there, they'll have, you could take a bowl and and they bruise it, right? But the point is, if there's a benefit, it's in the oil to try to capture that oil. So, right, food could be the slowest form of poison or safe and powerful medicine, but it's not medicine if you're not eating it, right? So that's what you got to do. Here's an example. This slide is another good friend of mine. This was Dr. Mladen Golubik. He's now at the University of Cincinnati. But it just shows you that 3/4 cup of kale neutralizes many free radicals as 800 milligrams of C and over 800 IUs of E, but it only contained in itself 40 milligrams of C and 10 IUs of E. So how can that happen? Because of all the other nutrients that are in the kale. It's cruciferous, soluble and insoluble fiber. There's 20,900 micrograms of lutein, good for your eyes. There's just so much in kale. There's as much calcium in a cup of kale as a glass of milk, right? You know, so just eating whole food is so important. That's just an example. So there's, you know, sure, when we eat, we're feeding or fighting disease, but there's a lot of debate on what feeds and what fights, even at Cleveland Clinic. I mean, there's, depending, you know, the toughest thing for me as a chef, patients come into the kitchen, they'll say, well, this doc says this doc says that, you know, and I just cook, right? You know, and they want to know, well, who do you listen to? So it's a tough thing to navigate, especially for chefs, right? So what is healthy? It's great, you know, you see docs do research all the time, and you got to keep your pencil sharp, not just in cooking, but know what's out there. So navigating the science can be really, really tough, right? Just an example. So here's how to make that even, you know, to explain it even better. Stephen Gundry wrote The Plant Paradox. It got a lot of notoriety. Kelly Clarkson dropped some weight on that book, right? Then, and the thing he says, though, in his book is not to eat lectins, which are in legumes.
Don't eat what, Joe?
Lectins. It's a component that's in a legume, all legumes. But he also sells lectin buster supplements, right? This guy over here, this guy's one of my heroes. I love this guy, is Michael Greger. So if anybody wants to know evidence-based science for free, anybody in the country, all you got to just one word you want to remember is nutritionfacts.org. You could go there. It's free to anybody in the country. You get all the evidence-based science that you want. He goes, this doc is all wrong, doesn't even pass the whiff test. So now you're a patient and you see both and you go, well, who do I believe and listen to? But you know what's great about culinary medicine and what chefs have the power is? How you hold that knife in your hand, it applies to any diet. It applies to any science. There's so many different docs at the clinic, and I tell them all, I'm a chameleon. I can morph myself into anybody's diet, right? Everybody's got to know how to cut and chop, right? So what is culinary medicine? Well, culinary medicine at Cleveland Clinic combines the evidence-based science, and I just said the science is across the board, right? So we try to take the strongest science, because it's easy to cherry pick it, to take the evidence-based science of food, nutrition, and medicine, and just combine it with the joy and art of cooking. It's pretty simple, right? Here's an example when it started, 2008, okay, John LaPuma, I actually did a demo with him in Chicago at Northwestern with Dr. Roizen at a medical conference. He wrote it starting in 2008. Michelle Hauser, this lady's awesome. Before she went to medical school, she worked with Alice Waters. She was a chef before she became a doc. She's really good. Did a whole curriculum for free, right? That's in about 100 different countries now. And then this one just came out in 2021. And then, so the Teaching Kitchen Collaborative had an NIH-funded research day. So I got to see about 36 different interpretations of culinary medicine. This is just 4 of them. And I looked at different ones, right? But a lot of them weren't, you know, in what I thought it should be. And again, I think it should be the science combined with the joy and art of cooking, right? And so that's what we did. This is the best depiction I could give you of culinary medicine. This is what culinary medicine is for us at Clinic. Culinary medicine takes nutritional science and it makes it taste good. That's it. Culinary medicine takes nutritional science and it bridges it with quality of life. If I'm with a toxic cancer patient and if they got a head and neck cancer and they're on a mechanical soft or a pureed diet where it's got to be all chopped up, well then by golly, that puree should taste good. Or if they're Crohn's, cardiac, celiac, it does not matter. Everybody should enjoy their food. And I remember, I don't know, you know, Jim Miller might remember, and maybe Renee. I don't see too many old-time chefs in here. But John Folse, remember John, were you at a convention when John Folse just became president?
Yeah.
And he says, for ACF, his mission was to make them the authority of cooking on America. I forgot what year that was, but that was a long, long time ago. John Folse. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. He was a past ACF president. And you know what? That's where chefs have the power on how to help people have a better quality of life by taking their diet restriction and help. And if they can find enjoyment in it, right, that can help them sustain the behavior change that they're being advised to do by their primary care physician, clinical provider, whatever, right? In culinary medicine, it weaves in multiple disciplines. I just talked earlier about functional medicine, the gardening piece, right? Somebody here said the Thanksgiving holiday when Dr. Mike was talking to you. You know what that is? That's an extension of hospitality. Everybody breaks bread with the people they love. They set the table, sharing and caring, right? And then Gabby and I talk all the time in the kitchen to our patients. You know, certain docs will talk about essential oils for aromatherapy. You sure get a lot of it in the kitchen with ginger and cinnamon. And I tell everybody I got 4 grandsons. The one thing they're going to remember about Papa is that his kitchen smells like garlic. And those memories are formed in childhood and carried for life. Everybody here's got memories of that. It's etched in stone, right? Yeah. So you get a lot of disciplines in the kitchen, and that's something chefs can convey, right? Bottom line is you want to love what loves you back. Now that's going to be different for everybody. If someone here was diagnosed as being celiac, having celiac disease, gluten's not going to love you back, right? Okay, so instead, you got to think about all the things you can have. The other thing I like to tell people is you can't love what you don't know, right? So when I go to do different presentations in different group and different demographics, and some things may not be culturally sensitive, how do you know if you never tried it? You can't love what you don't know, right? We talked about John Folse. Well, when in Louisiana, what do they got in Louisiana? They got French, they got African American and Choctaw Indians. And I'm sure they at one point started blending. Oh, wow, this is really good, right? Yeah. Okay, so what's the goal? Goal is satisfaction and knowledge, right? Meaning, if you're loving what loves you back, and you know the means to the end, we were able to increase people's culinary literacy. That's what we do as job educators. That's what you do, Renee, right? Okay, that'll foster adherence. Hopefully we get people to want to sustain the behavior change that they're being, asked to do by their medical providers, and that fosters innovation. So if I could teach someone how to make something sweet without adding sugar, which Gabby's going to do a demo coming up that'll show you that, and you'll get to taste it. Proof's in the pudding, right? And that fosters innovation. If I could show you how to make it to one thing, you could do it to 10 others. Now, you're being innovative. During COVID time, we created a culinary medicine toolkit that's available to all our caregivers. And, from kitchen equipment, cooking methods, grocery lists, knife skills, all that stuff, and of course, recipes. Now we're going to morph that into a Taussig Cancer Center Nutrition Culinary Medicine Toolkit. We did one for epilepsy, an epilepsy nutrition culinary medicine toolkit, and working on doing one for the Latinx population as well. And how can that be different? So example, Taussig Cancer Center. Well, in their kitchen equipment, we don't want to give them a metal spatula, especially if they have metallic taste in their mouth from radiation and chemo and that. So that's just an example on how to swap things out, right? So we did nice skills, because that's the most important thing to get people to change, right? We did a video, the clinic put it on YouTube. Culinary medicine now, think about it, if food is medicine, right, then it should be part of every doc's medicine bag, right? They need to be culinary literate. And Dr. Roizen's really good. I mean, he was doing books on cooking decades ago. That's Milano, who's now at University of Cincinnati, but it's really important. And then, of course, this book, as you know, but that's an example of culinary medicine. It's a doc and a chef, and we partnered together. Wednesday last week, Dr. Roizen and I recorded our 88th episode of In the Kitchen with Chef Jim and Dr. Mike on Vimeo. Anybody could see it. That's culinary medicine, because doc is the science, and we illustrate how to do it in the kitchen with a recipe, right? So it's not just talk. This is at Stephanie Tums Jones Health Center, where we did a study over there called the Honor Project. This is Warrensville Heights Community Center. Then we did the Worldwide Classroom that was probably in 4 states, probably about a dozen schools, and maybe between 250 and 300 children combined. And we did this 3 times. With Dr. Roizen, we started doing culinary medicine at his medical conference, and in 2019, we had our very own culinary medicine workshop. These are all docs over here. Then the executive chef and the banquet chef of the Four Seasons, which is part of Mandalay Bay, was really kind of us. They let us go into their banquet kitchen while they had other stuff going on. These are all docs and they're all learning knife skills, and that if food is medicine, the need to increase their culinary literacy. These are anesthesiology residents. We started doing anesthesiology residents since 2014, and I think April 28th is our anesthesiology day that we're going to do it this year. But knife skills was a big part of what they do, right? First responders. We all want our first responders to be healthy, right? Especially when we're going to need them. All first responders have a kitchen, right? They do 24-hour shifts and 48s. And so this is in the city of University Heights, and we did culinary medicine programming for first responders. This is in their kitchen, and this is trying to teach them how to grill without burning or charring or getting anything black, because there's certainly the science shows of all the carcinogens associated with the grilling process. And this one's really powerful. This one I'm especially really proud of, because I think I'll go on a limb and say I think I'm the only chef in the country that's doing this. This is a culinary medicine consult that's charted in Epic in a patient's medical record. Chefs don't do that. It took about 9 months of jumping through layers of hoops, leadership at Cleveland Clinic, to get this to happen, because they had to change templates and all this stuff. And they go, how many people are we doing this for? And I go, I think I'm the only one. And, I mean, they got legions of dietitians. So, it just was a lot of work to make this happen just for one guy to do this. But they did it. And why is it so special? This is why. So when you are prescribed a dietary change, be it from a physician or a dietitian, basically it's you need to eliminate this from your diet and include this, right? Patient goes home, now how do I do that, right? Okay, I was just diagnosed celiac. How do I cook without gluten, all that stuff? So first we got to capture your food preferences. My wife and I, Deb's back there, we raised 2 kids. They didn't like the same thing. Got 4 grandsons, they don't like the same thing. Everybody's got different food preferences, right? Your current knowledge about recipes and techniques. Everybody's on a different playing field. Everybody's got a different culinary literacy level. Your ability to cook and prepare meals. We do a shared medical appointment for people with MS. They get fatigued so easy. They have a hard time just standing, right? So, I mean, everybody's on a different field there as well. What's available in your kitchen? We all got different stuff, right? What family support do you have? Do you live alone? Do you cook for someone? Does someone cook for you? And then last but not least, what are the dietary restrictions that you're prescribed to follow? Once I could capture all that information, now I could help a patient, we could help the patient, right? Follow a prescribed nutritional consult, be it from a doctor or a dietitian, so they don't compromise the taste of their meals or their health. And they could pay it forward to members of their family, right? Because it's tough when one person's eating this and someone else is eating something different. You need to have that buddy system so you're on the same page, right? People have a hard enough time just cooking one meal, much less 2, right? Okay. We're part of the Teaching Kitchen Collaborative. It's a pretty prestigious group. We're inaugural members of that group. But the mission of this group is to teach culinary literacy, okay? It started with David Eisenberg from Harvard School of Public Health, Department of Nutrition, the Culinary Institute of America. And they did Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives, if anybody ever heard of that. And then it morphed into this, I think, in 2016. This was an article that they put out on teaching kitchens. We were lucky we were prominently featured, but this is this patient over here where she actually got off all her diabetes medication. So what is the essence of our program and our curricula? This is it. It's simply technique driven. How to make something moist without fat, sweet without sugar, flavor without sodium, bulk without grains, density without meat, how to cook without oil if you need to, right, or are being prescribed to, like like a patient of Dr. Esselstyn's, or how to add flavor to raw foods. If you could do that, you could do it to any diet. It doesn't matter the diet, it's simply a technique. Example, we're all in the flavor business. I consider myself in the flavor business, right? So if you take a technique, any of these techniques, you could transcend it to any type of diet that you want. A perfect example, a way to increase flavor is what? Who would give me a way to increase flavor? A simple way that would apply to anything. You guys are chefs, come on.
Spice.
What?
Spice.
Without adding spice or without a technique that has nothing to do with an added component. Anybody want to give that a whack? Yeah.
Browning?
What?
Browning?
Yeah, you're halfway there. Keep going. Keep going. You're halfway there. Anybody else want to help them out? That's a good one. Like the Maillard reaction and all that, right? But, okay, I'll give it to you in the interest of time. A way to increase flavor is simply increase surface area. You got a whole, what's your name?
Brad.
Brad, you got a whole onion in your hand, right? Brown that whole onion. You're going to have a heck of a hard time. Julienne it, dice it, increase the surface area. You increase the area of which you could caramelize the naturally occurring sugars in that onion. Works on a carrot, a parsnip, a rutabaga, works on anything. Doesn't matter what the food is, it's just a simple technique. And it applies to any diet, right? It's really simple. Okay, how do you begin? How do you start, right? How do you get people to take that first step, right? We tell everybody, don't think about what you can't have, okay? You know, so let's say you just heard Dr. Mike talk about, you know, red meat and egg yolks, right? So how do you try to moderate your consumption of that? Well, thinking about it is just going to drive you crazy anyhow, right? Instead, you think about all the things you can have. If someone, I'll go back to the celiac person. If you were diagnosed as being celiac, you sure as heck aren't going to be thinking about gluten. Instead, you're going to think about all the grains that are gluten-free, right? That becomes your world. And then what can I make of that? And I could do that with virtually any diagnosis, right? Someone's on a FODMAP diet. Anybody here ever on a FODMAP diet? Anybody? On a FODMAP diet, you got to eliminate things from your diet, right? And then they want you to put other things into your diet that you probably never worked with before. And then there's a column in the middle that's got the big question mark on it, meaning, okay, I got to abstain from it for a while, but maybe I can reintroduce it back, depending how things work out when, you know, as time goes on, you know. But that's just one example, right? So you would think about, you take the things that you're supposed to have that you can't have, and you build upon that, right? And then how can I make that taste good? All right. We give recipes? Yeah, we give recipes, but I'd much rather teach people how to fish than give them a fish. Because remember, everybody's got different taste preferences. Everybody's got different diet restrictions, right? But if I could give those techniques to them, then, you know, I mean, think about it. If you could fish a river or a creek or a pond, a lake, you're home free. You could do anything if they master those techniques, okay? Here's an example. Cashew nays. We're going to demo it today. You're going to get to try it today. But you heard Dr. Mike talk about egg yolks, okay? A lot of chefs use mayonnaise. Mayonnaise is made with egg yolks, right? Okay, so some people say, well, then I'll go to the store and I'll buy some Vegenaise, which is really good. Two problems with Vegenaise. One, it's so good you could eat it with a spoon. The other thing is the main ingredient's oil. Now, when they talk about fat and oils, it don't matter what kind of fat. You're talking about 120 calories a tablespoon. And for all the restaurants that'll take that olive oil and they'll put it on a plate, right? And then they'll season it, okay? And then they give you that bread to dip in it, right? That oil served as nothing more than a moisturizer for that bread at the expense of 120 calories for a tablespoon. And bread could suck up a lot of oil, right? Especially when they got a whole basket there and then they give you another plate. Cashew nays, right? The only oil in it was naturally occurring in the cashew, 3 acids, apple cider vinegar, distilled vinegar, lemon juice, and then it's got garlic. The sugar was a raisin reduction, which is over here. So instead of adding sugar, equal parts of raisins, right? Cup of raisins, cup of water, put it in a pot, rehydrate it, reduce it down to about 3 tablespoons, put it in the blender, blend it up. You know, you can freeze it. You can make double batches, use it for savory dishes, baked goods, everything. But just like, you know, if someone needs fiber and they go to, you know, have a prune, raisins got fiber too, right? So, and they also got phytonutrients, they got antioxidants, and they got naturally occurring sugars. So instead of adding, you know, sugar or honey or agave nectar, you're getting at least some benefit from the raisin. Also, when they talk about traditions, so instead of having pumpkin pie, a lot of times at our house we'll do a pumpkin mousse, right? So it's totally vegan and plant-based, but my kids would call it, that's Papa's pumpkin pie, so that's why I named it that, because that creates a new tradition. Mac and cheeseless, we're gonna do the sauce today. We didn't bring any pasta or nothing, but that's a great recipe. This is what it looks like. 28 ounces of sweet potatoes, 4 cups unsweetened almond milk, put it in a pot, reduce it down, bring it back up to 3 cups, put it in a blender with a cup of cashews soaked overnight, the salt, Dijon mustard, nutmeg, smidget of cayenne. It's outstanding. Okay, cauliflower gold. When you mention spices, spices got a lot of health benefits. So we take cauliflower, you want, you know, everybody knows, at least in the chef world, consistency and size equates to consistency and doneness. That's something we want to teach those that we serve, right? So you get even cooking. We caramelize the cauliflower. They got naturally occurring sugars, but we don't want to overcook it because it's cruciferous. Anything cruciferous overcooked isn't as palatable, right? We take our spices, we toast them because they taste better toasted when they're not, but they could go from toasted to burnt in a nanosecond, right? So we stop the burning process by adding our vegetable broth, tomato paste, which is a great form of lycopene. You get more lycopene when a tomato's cooked than when it's raw. Put in our cauliflower, walnuts, more omega-3 in a walnut than any other nut. And we toss it. It's got a golden color, and that's why we call it cauliflower gold. It has turmeric in there, chili powder in there, garam masala. There's benefits, turmeric, anti-inflammatory, right? And so it'll love you back. This is a true story. This gentleman over here, Gabby and I gave a presentation at Euclid Hospital. That's a picture from our presentation. And we're giving them the same lecture almost like I'm giving you guys. And this guy says, well, you can't, how do you make pizza healthy? I'm Slovenian, you can't make it healthy. And I looked at the guy and I says, well, I'm Slovenian too, and yes, you can. And it's in the book. It's totally vegan. My wife and I worked on this for about 5 years. We failed a lot of times, but finally we got it nailed right. And it's totally plant-based. It's sweet with raisin reduction, 100% whole grain, so you could do it. If you have an egg, just to have an egg on its own, scrambled, over easy, whatever, you know, the egg's not really working for you. You're just having an egg to have an egg. So we tell patients that at least if they have a frittata, right, and if we use egg whites without the yolk, then the eggs are nothing more than the glue to hold a bunch of plants together. Plus we could put in ginger and we could put in turmeric that actually fight inflammation. And so, you know, then we'll serve it over 100% whole grain, like a Ezekiel tortilla. Now you're getting 100% whole grains along with all those plants, the ginger, turmeric, the spices, and the egg whites that basically just hold it together. And what's the textbook ratio of a vinaigrette, anybody? Right, 3 to 1. Okay, so we never do 3 to 1, and we tell people never to do 2 to 1. The most we would ever advise is 1 to 1. Gabby's going to show you how to make an SOS with no oil or sodium or added sugar at all coming up. But here's a way you could do it on a 1 to 1. So we make a broccoli bean salad, right? We take the beans and we'll actually macerate them in our hands, just like mashing them like potatoes, and we whisk it in, and look how thick that gets, right? And then the broccoli, how many, what's shocking? Where's the student there? Give me a student. What's shocking? What's shocking in cooking? What does that mean when you shock something?
To bring it back into form.
When you shock in cold water? Yeah, right? We don't tell people to do that, especially with broccoli. Here's why. If you took broccoli and you shocked it in cold water, that florette's like a sponge. It's going to hold water. If I squeeze it, it'll just drip right out. And it will dilute all the goodness in the bowl that I'm trying to create from whatever, whether it's a rub or anything else I'll do, and in this case, this salad. So instead, we take it, I'll shock it in cold air. If I wanted to, if I need to get it cold, I'll put it on a rack, throw it in the refrigerator, and I got convection air shocking that broccoli, right? Or we'll just let it stay at room temp and we'll blot it dry. But you know what happens then? That broccoli is al dente, it's crunchy, it's crisp, but it is dry. Therefore, it captures all the goodness in that bowl. It's absolutely delicious. We macerate the beans, then we add the rest of the beans, add our broccoli, toss it. It's fabulous. I'm not going to talk about this because Gabby's going to show it to you, so I'm going to bypass it. Veggie rice. Do you need a recipe for veggie rice? Absolutely not. Okay, you could put the kitchen sink in veggie rice, and does it have to be rice? Absolutely not. It could be veggie millet, veggie farro, veggie quinoa, veggie, you pick your choice of grain, okay? The point being is that if I have a cup of veggies and I put 5, 6, 7 cups of plants, the plants moisten the grain. And that's the take-home point there. In this case, we got greens, we chiffonade them. Why? Because they will quicker when they're in a chiffonade. And then we got onions. You can see we'll do onions with very little oil. Mushrooms are loaded with umami, right? Especially shiitakes. You know, you can make a shiitake taste almost like bacon, right? And then we'll add all the veggies back. We add our grain, add some broth, maybe spike it with chili, and it's delicious. We try to show patients the power of reducing something, you know, and that's what this example does. So we'll take mushrooms, we'll stuff them, but all the moisture that comes out from the vegetables and the mushroom that were in the pan when we bake them off, then we take it, reduce it down, fortifies that flavor, and the patients learn that, right? And you can see just by the spoon how thick that is and viscous it is and the color of it. And all that was a reduction of the moisture that came out from the mushrooms and the veggies, right? We also show patients the power of reducing this way, okay? So plain water. We got sweet potatoes, rutabaga, carrots. If you cook them sequentially, because rutabaga take twice as long, if not more, than a carrot to cook, right? And so we take it out, you know, with a skimmer, and then we reduce it down, and they could see not only does it retain the nutrients, but look how much flavor they get. So that's a simple thing that they could do, especially it'll spread through different diets as well. You know, so like that cancer patient, I could take it, I can mash it up, and then turn it into mechanical soft or puree or whatever. Almond Gold is our version of golden milk. We elected not to use dates because dates are high on the glycemic index. Turkish apricots are low, right? And then in the absence or in the presence of a fat or protein in there, so the almond butter that we put in there, it adds fat and protein, so the naturally occurring sugars in there you'll absorb even more slowly. Okay, which is a good thing to do in a smoothie. So if someone makes a smoothie and you put chia seed in the smoothie, think about it this way. If a doc says, Jim, you got any OJ in the kitchen because I got a patient whose blood sugar dropped. If a patient's hypoglycemic and you give them a glass of OJ and they swallow it, it spikes their sugar right away, right? You know, so we're not designed to swallow sugar. So if you chew that orange, you're getting that sugar more slowly because you're chewing it. And digestion, by the way, starts in the mouth, right, when you chew. So this way, if you add fat and protein that takes longer to absorb, and chia seed's got a healthy form of fat, high omega-3 fat, you put that in your smoothie, it makes the sugars in there a little less glycemic, a little bit more like chewing that orange than drinking it. So any form of protein will do that. So this is a quinoa ragu. We try to show people how they could buy frozen peas, right? Buy crushed tomatoes. They could even buy squash and bag frozen or use fresh. You know, they cook cauliflower, broccoli, add some broth. This is an outstanding recipe. We could do dumplings from lentils, or this is one from squash, but it's vegan. It doesn't use any eggs. You cook the squash, flour, baking powder, baking soda, you make your batter. You can put any spice in it if you want. Put it in a broth, and now you got a great dumpling that you could have in a vegetable ragu, right? And then we also show patients this too. One of the things I used to do a program with a dietitian, we would go to a grocery store, and that was one of the favorite parts of shopping. And what this shows here is that we try to tell patients that you see where the black line is on the squash, right? They don't all have the same yield factor, right? So we tell them, you don't want to get a squash with a big bottom and a small top. You want a squash with a small bottom and a big top, because the top is solid, right? And the bottom's seeds. And then we do it this way, and we illustrate and show them how to do that. Some patients have a hard time fabricating a squash or to cut through it. And so we also work with them on how to do that, right? And how to get leverage and let the knife by sawing do the work. And just so many teeny little things. These pancakes, not only are they all vegan, but what this shows is instead of having maple syrup, which there's not a lot of redeeming value in maple syrup. So what are the three main addictives in food? Anybody? What are they? What? Sugar. I got sugar. Another one? Salt. One more. Fat. Right. That's why everybody likes ice cream. It's the trifecta. It has all three, right? So did anybody here at one point in time, boy, that sun is bright. Anybody here at one point in time ever drink whole cow milk, go down to 2 and then 1 in skim? Did anybody ever do that? Right. Okay. Now, when you were doing that, if I gave you a glass of whole, what would you think? Heavy. Yeah, if there were 200 people in a room and I asked that question, 98% would say the exact same thing. It's heavy, thick, rich, whatever. A lot of them say, yuck, I wouldn't like it, all that kind of stuff. You know what that is? That's an example of saturated fat. You just validated that fact that if you abstain from it for a long enough period of time, you diminish your desire to want to have it. The same is true for sodium. The same is true for sugar. If you were in a hospital for 4 months on an LS diet and got out and had somebody pretzels with salt on it, you go, whoa, are they salty? Yeah, well, it's true. It works. So the key is getting people to slowly migrate down. Well, if you have maple syrup, it's just going to make you want more maple syrup, right? So instead, you want berries, right? They tell you eat the rainbow, right? Because they got all the phytonutrients, right? All the antioxidants, right? And then if we put berries that when they're too ripe, you freeze them, you put them in a pot, we put in chia seed, we make a berry syrup, and then we put berries on it. This is a berry crisp. It's only vegan. It's got whole oats in there, but there's no added sugar other than in this bottom one. We just use raisins, our raisin reduction. Chefs love to do this, right? This was a big thing. These are all the covers of magazines and that. This was a big trend for a while. Total, it's not going to love you back. There's definitely hardcore science on the carcinogens associated with anything that is burned or blackened. Worst thing you could put on a grill and burn or char is a hot dog because it's cured with nitrates, and nitrites form a carcinogen called nitrosamines, right? And then you look at this here, and they, just like the stadium was doing deep fried Twinkies. I mean, that was crazy. And then grilling donuts is just as bad. And this guy was a Cleveland chef. I'm not going to mention the name, but he went on and got media attention for burning and charring as well. Brings charcoal to Cleveland, so I do that in there because it's in Cleveland, but you don't want to burn or char nothing. So instead, we try to show people to make it small, lean, and thin. Cleveland Clinic's got me on a YouTube video doing this in real time. That was in the grill no more than 2 minutes. How? Because we did it on a bias. Why did we cut it on a bias? What was one of the ways to increase flavor? Increase surface area, right? So no skin. I was able to get the rub, both sides. That was in the grill 2 minutes, right? And one side, one flip on the older, less than 2 minutes, you're done. If you got and marinades will reduce carcinogens by up to 80%. There's a lot of science on that, especially with dark green leafy herbs in it. And If you have a marinade, though, the downside, if there's any oil in it, if it drips, it induces a flame. So you always want to have an offset fire to moderate your temperature and your heat zone. If you always have a cavity that you could close the lid, have holes, you close the holes, what happens? No air, no fire. Fire goes out, right? Okay. You know who had a really great, I love doing that with the firefighters because, man, they got a great concept of that. They know that, I mean, the color of smoke changes, right? What color's the smoke when you got a lot of humidity in the chamber? It's gray. Open up the holes, humidity escapes, smoke turns blue. Okay. Did this for the Latin community, right? So we made a chili pepper sauce, and point was that there's no, butter in it. There was no lard in it. There was nothing like that in there. It's totally, sugar-free other than the raisins that we put in it. It's absolutely delicious. Corn muffins, right? And cornbread is something else that has a lot of added fat to it. So ours we did one to show them how you do it with apples. It adds moisture to it, and it's a way to displace the fat and still provide the moisture. A cauliflower cream, instead of having a heavy cream sauce, you could do great things with cauliflower cream. You could see the chia seed, how the spoon is just standing up in there. It'll swell up to 10 times its weight in volume, aside from all the nutrients that it adds. Instead of having that milkshake that we said was a trifecta, if you take a banana, I think you're going to get it today. They'll make this for you. You'll try it. So banana, almond butter, vanilla, flaxseed. It's absolutely delicious. Unsweetened alternative milk, almond, hemp, whatever. And that's the end of it. And so now, Gabby, who is an alumni of you, she's going to demonstrate, right? And she's going to do the first recipe. She's going to do all 3 recipes, and I might narrate the last 2.
Wow, that sun is crazy. Okay.
Yeah, it is bright.
All right, I just have to say that this is really, really surreal to be standing here because I have taken classes here in this kitchen. I've gotten to learn from some great chefs over there, and yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I just have to say, too, give a shout out to Chef Jim. His passion just really radiates to everyone, and it's helped me become a better culinarian. So we are going to start with our no sugar, no salt, and no fat dressing. So we have 3 prunes and 3 figs that we cooked in just 3/4 cup of water. We reduced that down, and when you think of a prune, you think fiber, right? When you want some fiber, you're going to eat a prune. And so we are adding that to our dressing, which is going to also add some added, that natural sugar. So we're going to add balsamic vinegar. And you could use, a flavored vinegar if you wanted to, but we're going to use the real deal and add actual blueberries. And these are going to give us antioxidants, some vital nutrients, and then also more natural sweetness to this dressing. So I have 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, garlic, which is Jim's favorite, and then some Dijon mustard. Just gonna put it all in their blender. You could use a food processor if you wanted, but we're gonna blend this up. And I think I will. Plate over there, but this dressing is going to be nice and thick and rich. The blueberries add, thank you, add nice viscosity and thickness. But you can see that it's going to be thick and delicious, and it's going to love you back. All right, Chef Jim. Okay.
Hold it straight vertical.
Straight vertical?
Up and down. Yeah. A textbook vinaigrette won't be that thick, right? There was no oil in
here.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
All right. So the next one Gabby's going to do, what are you doing next?
Up to you. Let's do cashew knees.
Cashew knees, okay. So Gabby's going to do the cashew-nase. If you let this sit a little bit, it's almost like cream cheese. It's probably one of the best things my wife uses because she eats it like every day. But it'll pick up the characteristic of a cheese even after it sits for a while. So go on, Debbie. Go right ahead. So
Cup of cashews.
just put everything in there. It's straightforward, simple. She got the cashews. She's putting the vinegars in, the lemon juice, the apple cider vinegar, distilled vinegar.
It's done.
She's got our favorite garlic that goes in there. That's right.
Dry mustard.
Dried mustard. Yeah.
Little salt, cayenne. And do you want to talk about raisin reduction, or you already did?
I already did. Yep, and that was added sugar raisin reduction.
Is that a special cashew or just a raw cashew?
Raw cashews.
Soaked overnight.
Yeah.
All right.
So this is just one recipe. You make a double batch, you'll have more depth. You'll be able to, it'll get even easier. The other two are made in advance so you could try.
Okay. That probably could have been a little smoother.
You got any extra spoons here?
Yes.
Great. So you could see, here's what you got. And instead of having mayonnaise, right, there's no egg yolks in it. It's really nice and thick. And a little bit longer, it'll get even smoother in there. Okay? All right.
How long do you keep that in the fridge then?
Oh, man, that'll last a couple weeks. Oh, yeah.
Dressing will last up to a month, too.
And the
fridge.
last one is, and all of these are a good example of don't think about what you can't have. Instead, think about all the things you can have. I'll tell you, you go to that can have world, it'll be your saving grace. It'll carry you every single time, no matter what it is. Just because focus. You heard Dr. Mike talk about the stress and gene expression, anxiety, and all that, right? Yeah. When you think about all the things you can have, man, that just ramps up your stress and anxiety, and bums you out. So why even go there, right? Think about all the things you can have. It'll sustain you every single time. Okay, so mac and cheese, man, that's a tough one. When I do stuff, especially like at Langston Hughes and Warrensville Heights, they're mac and cheese aficionados, okay? Yeah, that's not an easy sell. Actually, Jason Frazier, who was the weather guy on Channel 3, was in our kitchen. We did a segment with him. And he did this live, and while we're recording, and when his first taste, I was like, I hope this guy likes this, right? And got high marks, so it was really good. So we got our cashews in there, right? Soaked overnight. 28 ounces of sweet potatoes cooked in unsweetened almond milk, right? We bring the almond milk back up to 3 cups, okay? And then we put in our salt and Dijon mustard, nutmeg, cayenne. Gabby will rattle that off when she puts it in.
Yep.
And you'll see what happens when we blend this. This one here, we're literally going to, after she makes it, we're going to pour in here. And then you could just dip a spoon in and try it. The point is that when you put this over pasta, you saw on the slide, now you got, plus you want 100% whole grain pasta. And if it was gluten-free, you want 100% whole grain brown rice, right? Always try to get 100% whole grain. Why? Anybody, why? Why would you, if you took a kernel of wheat, what's the 3 parts of a kernel of wheat? Anybody?
Endosperm.
What?
Endosperm.
Endosperm? Germ. Endosperm. What's the third one? What? Bran. That's right. Right, Renee. Right. Exactly. So when you get a whole grain, you get all of that. When you get all AP flour, they take out the bran and they take out the germ, and that's why it's called fortified, right? Then they go to put something back. It's better just eat the whole grain. Okay, Gabby.
All right, everything's in here.
Yeah. Okay, how are we on time? Okay.
Want to get an emulsion.
Carry it through to make changes.
All right. And it comes just like a cheese sauce. You want me to pour it in?
Yeah, go right
Okay.
ahead. So hold it up so they can see it pour. Yeah. Now look how thick that comes out, right?
I don't have that much arm strength.
Yeah.
My hand strength, I'll say.
There you go. And
All
so
right.
there we go. That's it. Good job, Gabby.
Yes. All right.
So we can take any questions if anybody's got any. And if not, just
I'm gonna
yes,
blend this a
dear.
little more.
Oh, microphone.
So I was wondering if the clinic, it looks like they do, outreach in the community. Schools, very important, especially just, there's been a lot of focus on schools with eating healthy and whatnot, but do they do anything with nursing and rehab facilities that say the clinic is like suggesting that their patients go to? Because I know food at a lot of not like the resort type retirement homes, but nursing facilities that have a lot of rehab patients, are there for a few months to a year, maybe forever. It doesn't seem like that quality food it's just really bad. Do they do anything with that?
I'm not sure I understand your question, but the one thing that you mentioned that the food is really bad is an important point to make. I would get that a lot at Cleveland Clinic or just in hospitals in general, but I'll just stay with Cleveland Clinic right now. I'd get a lot of cardiac patients would come and say, they're serving this to a cardiac patient, right? And Cleveland Clinic outsources all its food service, okay? Myself, Gabby, and maybe only two other people are only chefs I know that are actually employed by Cleveland Clinic. Everything else is outsourced. And there's a financial piece to doing that, right? And in terms of just about any hospital, anywhere, I think that if they want to have good food, whether it be in a patient unit or floor, or in an assisted living or extended facility. My wife worked on a skilled nursing unit where they had long patient length of stay, right, at Lakewood Hospital. But at hospital, we did scratch food there at Lakewood Hospital. Unfortunately, that hospital's not there anymore. They tore it down. But if they want to have good food in a hospital, in my opinion, they need to take the food service workers and put them on the payroll, just like the docs and the nurses, give them a good rate of pay and send them to school for continued education. Then they got a stake and they got skin in the game and ownership, right? I think that would improve it. The rest of it is too political for me to even get into and try to answer. I can't even do that.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because there's so much focus on other parts of communities, but not so much on what elderly people eat.
But here's what you could do for the elderly, right? So how many chefs work in a nursing facility, right? They need chefs. And a chef could go there and do the same thing I try to do at the hospital to improve that food and make it better, okay? A perfect example at Lakewood Hospital, when I first started there, I was only there a couple weeks, and I got called up to see a patient. I'll never forget this. And, this food was terrible. And I go, okay, I'll go up there. And I went there with a nurse, right? Because it was her patient. And anyhow, they served the patient eggplant parmesan, right? And this guy was really unhappy with it. And I said, first thing I said is, well, anything else I could get you just to appease this person, this patient, right? And then I says, I don't know what they did. I'm only here a couple of weeks, but I can guarantee you I'm going to find out, right? Well, what they did was they bought it from Cisco, already sliced, already breaded, already cooked, and they slapped it together in the pan, right? And when I got there weren't a lot of chefs or anybody there. They were just domestic people working in the kitchen, right? And we changed it after that. We bought fresh eggplant, we sliced it, we bread it, we cooked it, we put it together. I mean, I cut my teeth in Little Italy. I worked at the Bluegrass, Murray Hill. I mean, I worked with a lot of Italians, and eggplant parm is something I did really, really well. We did it right. But if you just do basic fundamentals, you'll be okay. But chefs can make a difference by when you take that job, trying to do whatever you can to upgrade the quality of the food. And you got, man, I'll tell you, you know how many battles I would fight with docs and administrators just in my capacity now to do? I mean, you could ask my wife, especially when it's not my money. I'll always buy something that's a better product. And I did that all my life. I got 37 years in hospitals, and I did that for 37 years. Why? Because there's a saying in the culinary world, good in will help you get good out, right? So I want to start with something decent. And then if I protect it with integrity and good principles, then chances are I'll get a good outcome, and that's what you do. But when it comes to, salaries and pay and what they do for food service workers, that's above my pay grade to do that. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, I did have one.
Yeah.
Oops. So I had a question come in from online. Let me pull it up real quick. What percentage of the population do you think really wants to start working on increasing the consumption of healthier choices? They brought up a bunch of examples like the makers of Fruit Loops made the most ethical companies list, Hostess CEO talking about everyone should eat 2 of their snacks every day for energy, Lunchables advertised in a Healthier Choice magazine, and examples like that. Obviously, these are big corporations that are putting, their messaging out there. Do you have any data or surveys or anything that kind of constitutes that in general people are trying to eat healthier or looking to eat healthier?
Yeah, so I don't have qualitative data or quantitative data. I got qualitative data. Here's the data. Is that the young generation today? So I'm in my second pilot. This is part of an IRB-approved study with Cleveland Clinic, Lerner College of Medicine, third-year medical students. The first one was first-year med students, right? This generation they totally buy into the food as medicine. They're different than the older generation of docs. Totally, okay? You saw the slide on anesthesiology residents. They are so into it, okay? This food as medicine piece, it is so much more with the new generations coming up because the opposition, there is a tsunami of opposition against us, right? Because it's all money, okay? But you know what? One of the things Dr. Mike didn't mention was that aha moment, what a lot of people get. What's the aha moment? It could be a diagnosis, someone else in the family, something happened to, a passing, whatever, or something personal in your life, and all of a sudden that light bulb comes on, right? And in my own personal life, I got a family member that just happened to have a bypass, and he got the aha moment the hard way, okay? So, I mean, how do you start? Well, you just message. Well, that's what I'm doing here today. And who am I messaging to? The next generation of people that are cooking for everybody. So you guys, you could go either way. You could serve foods that promote disease and inflammation, which is a precursor for all chronic disease. And think about it this way. It is, as a chef, it is easy to make things taste good with added sugar, sodium, and fat. Man, is that easy. If you want to know if you're good, try to do it without that stuff. Ain't so easy, and that's where your skills come into play, right? So if you love what loves you back, and if you can get people to love and enjoy food that's going to love them back, irrespective of their dietary restrictions, right? And taste preferences, man, you're doing really good. And to help and serve someone and that's golden, right? To help someone's quality of life, right? And you can't promise nothing. I can't, in the science world, you can't promise nothing, and especially I'll be darned if I'm going to do it being with Cleveland Clinic, and this is a Cleveland Clinic thing. I ain't promising nothing, but I'll tell you this, that if you did a lot of the lifestyle things Dr. Mike talked about, so if you meditated, if you did yoga, and specifically if you made the right food choices, you just might find you might be able to bend a little bit more than you used to, maybe walk a little bit more than you used to, maybe have a little bit more energy than you used to have, and you won't know it right off the bat, right? It creeps up on you, and the way you know it is, hey man, I'm not as tired as I used to be or whatever. And that is priceless and golden. And then paying it forward is even more priceless. So that's all I got. I've probably got food to eat. They're going to want to eat. So, okay. Okay. So, thank you. Yeah.
Well, I think that's our presentation for today. Thank you again to Chef Jim Perko, Gabby Shipta, and then Dr. Michael Roizen, who had to leave. Appreciate everyone for coming in person and those watching virtually. I think it was a very informative presentation. Hopefully it gives you second thoughts about how we cook and how we can cook for others. So a quick example, I work at a casino, and we have a lot of guests that look for sugar-free desserts. So my pastry chef and I were making these cookies. No gluten, no eggs, no sugar. They're really, really good, dark chocolate, so you have to like chocolate. And if you're allergic to nuts, stay away because they have walnuts and pecans. So now we're trying to figure out how we could scale that up to make 1,000 cookies instead of 20. So we're working on that. So I think there's ways that you can do it without really advertising that it's healthy. As long as food tastes great, I don't think people care if it's marketed as healthy or not. So we prepared a few recipes for those that are here to try, and sorry you can't try them at home. But again, thank you. And thank you to Tri-C for hosting us. And that's going to be it for the presentation.
Thank you, Darren.
Thank you.